before we get started, we'll just do a quick little drop-in into the space. So you can just start by trying to look around and orient. Allow your eyes to slowly take in everything in your environment, 360 degrees around. And as you do, allow your breath to deepen. Inhaling deep through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips, like you're slowly trying to flicker a candle flame with your breath. And just take note of all the colors, the shapes, textures, patterns. Even taking a moment to look back behind you. Looking up above you as well. And below you. Looking down at your own body. Noticing all the fine details of your arms, your hands, or the clothing that is on your skin. And maybe bring in some touch with a gentle massage, first starting with the hands or the legs. And coming up the arms. And as you massage your body, just sending your love into every place you touch and maybe silently saying to yourself, "This is my body. This is my body." And then you can come into a self-holding position, taking one hand underneath the opposite armpit, other hand over top of the opposite shoulder. Allow the shoulders to just rest down the back. And begin to tune in deeper to your breath. Inhaling deep through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips. Candle breath. Taking a few rounds of this breath to really allow your awareness to start to settle inward. And either closing the eyes or taking a soft gaze towards the ground with your focus going in, I invite you to just slowly scan the body, your inner world. I like to imagine a feather dropping down from the crown of the head. Slowly as it sways side to side as if falling to the earth, just notice every area that it touches and what is alive in you right now. Noticing any sensations, where in the body you feel tension, where in the body you feel expansion. And any other nuances and flavors of sensation that exist within you right now. And if it feels comfortable for you, I'd love to invite in some sound to allow the nervous system to really settle through your own vibration being emitted into the space. So we'll do the sound VU, V-U. But we do it in a long format, kind of like you would say Om. So we'll inhale. Let's do that 2 more times. Last one. And just taking 2 more breaths here. And allowing your eyes to slowly open as you feel ready. And you can allow the self-holding to soften, maybe just taking hands down by the sides, or if you want to take a little stretch to enter into the space, you can take a stretch or some neck rolls to just arrive. And maybe notice at any point if you need a sip of water, need to use the restroom, know that you can resource yourself at any time. No need to ask. You can just take what you need for yourself. So, yeah. To dive into what we'll be talking about today and kind of the format so you know what to expect, is we'll be talking about the concept of belonging and what that really entails to feel a sense of belonging both within as well as in the world. And so we'll dive a little bit into the concept of belonging as well as shadow aspects that help us to understand maybe what parts of ourselves that we haven't allowed to belong within and to be expressed in the world. So we'll touch a little bit about shadow work too, and then we'll have some journaling prompts to kind of go into and understand maybe where some of these pieces came from and when they started to arise in your life. And then we'll have a little bit of an embodiment practice towards the end where we will stand up, we'll shake a little bit, and then just really tune into pendulating in between different experiences and understanding what the felt sense of when we see a shadow arise or when we notice a part of ourselves is not feeling welcomed. We can start to witness what that feels like in the body. And then we'll have some sharing and then close at the end. And so, yeah. That's the format for today. So first thing to dive into is just, what is belonging? And what does belonging feel like? So to kind of start us diving into this inquiry, I'd love to invite you to either close down the eyes or take a soft gaze again. And I'm going to read you 3 different definitions of belonging. And I want you to really just tune into how this feels as you receive these different definitions and the difference between the felt sense of each definition. So first definition is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Belonging is to be suitable, appropriate, or advantageous. Belonging is to be suitable, appropriate, or advantageous. And just breathe into receiving that. Just notice how it feels and maybe where it's alive in the body as you feel it. And then definition 2 from the Cambridge Dictionary. To feel that you are in the right place. To feel that you are in the right place. So just allow yourself to breathe in that definition and notice the difference in feeling within as you receive it. And then the last definition is just my personal understanding of what belonging means. And that is to feel that all of you is welcomed, to feel that every part of you is allowed, has a right to be heard, and is worthy of love. To feel that all of you is welcomed, to feel that every part of you is allowed, has a right to be heard, and is worthy of love. Just breathing in as you receive those words and notice what is felt, where it is felt. And then when you're ready, you can open the eyes. Beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing when we tune into just the power of words, how they can impact us on a somatic level. So when we talk about belonging, I want to talk about where do we even start with that? In a world where we may have been told different parts of us are too much or not enough, and we've masked and put on different layers or patched up different layers of ourselves and shoved them down, where do we start to allow these pieces of us to be seen, to be witnessed, to be a part of our wholeness? And for me, it starts with somatic safety. And what somatic safety is kind of like the practice we started with, taking time to really tune in and grow our capacity to be present with what is. And this is something that happens drip by drip. So it's a process called titration. So we don't want to just go into the deepest depths of what hasn't been allowed in our life and then just blurt it out into the world, because we haven't cultivated that safety within first to be with that part of ourselves and feel safe in bringing it out into the world. And sometimes that can throw us a little over capacity, oh yeah, I showed that part of myself and then it was rejected again. So see, I just proved to myself that I should just shove it back down. And so it's a gentle process of unwinding and slowly, discerning where these parts of us are safe to be expressed. And sometimes that starts just within of understanding ourselves at a deeper level, so we can start to show the people who are closest to us that we know we can trust those different aspects. And we can even speak to it hey, I notice a part of myself or something that I'm a part of me wants to express. And it feels a little edgy right now. Do you feel in capacity to receive it? Just kind of testing the waters and creating that safety within both your own body and starting to express it externally. So it is a slow process. It does happen over time. It's not something we want to dive headfirst and go into the trenches of our shadow. It's something we want to slowly start to peel back those layers with. And another aspect of creating somatic safety is this process of pendulation. So what pendulation does is when we swing too far into one side and we're now I'm feeling a little edgy and unsafe, we always have this place we can swing back to. And we'll go into that in a practice towards the end of this workshop. But it's just this understanding that we can come back home within our own body if something ever in our life, not just around belonging or shadow, but emotions or different aspects ever feel like too much and we feel out of capacity. A really beautiful way to come back home into belonging is if you notice yourself at the edges of your capacity, you can say, okay, I'm feeling at my edge, so how can I return back to maybe a moment of joy in my life just by recalling a memory or something you're grateful for, or something like that, to bring you in capacity to go back and forth between those states so that you can eventually find that middle ground and those different elements don't throw you off the deep end in any which way. And somatic safety happens through breath, touch, sound, and movement to allow us to start that inner inquiry of how does this part of me want to move? What does this part of me want to express? What does it want to say? How does it want to sound? Does it want to sigh right now? Do I want to move? Do I want to shake it out? and just really tuning into what's alive and how that wants to move through you. So let's just take a breath with that and allow ourselves to receive. So then that brings me into the awareness aspect, another part of how do we start? Where do we begin? How do we even know these parts of ourselves that have, been lost along the way or pressed so deep down that we don't even recognize them anymore? And it's through awareness. And I want to use this quote by Richard Rudd from the Gene Keys. And he says, "In order to accept something about yourself, especially something uncomfortable, it must first be recognized." So, this brings us into the shadow. And I'll start just by touching into what is the shadow. And is anyone here familiar with shadow work? Cool.
I think in different language.
Yeah, for sure. So the shadow is essentially anything in our life that we have ever repressed, denied, or rejected, or we have felt has been repressed, denied, or rejected by the world around us. And so what the shadow emerges as later in life is it can be things that trigger us, or maybe things that we pedestal someone else outside of us because we see they have a quality that we don't, and in doing so we think of ourselves as less than. And so the shadow, how it forms, it's something that forms essentially as soon as we are born. We slowly start to pick up these parts of ourselves that are unworthy, quote unquote, of receiving love. And so something as little as when you're a child being held, if you're crying and then your parents put you down and nope, I can't deal with that, then you learn to not cry. These are little unconscious things that you learn to start shoving down your suppression. Or when you do realize that when you cry, you get more of what you want, you use that as a technique. It's okay, cool. If I'm loud about what I need, or if I'm loud about my expression, then someone will come to my aid and someone will bring me love. So it's these little things that we pick up even as we are infants that start to be slowly stored in our subconscious of, okay, if I do this, I'll receive love. If I don't do this, I'll receive love. And so we start to refine ourselves and move away from the true self, which is basically who we are as we emerge from the womb. And we start to create a constructed self. And this constructed self is still aspects of our truth. It's who we are. We wouldn't be able to have those aspects of constructed self if they didn't exist within us. But with the constructed self, it puts on masks in certain scenarios, around certain people, or just in our daily life, even with our closest loved ones. We'll start to see different aspects of ourselves like shutting down because we don't feel like they will be loved or allowed. And it's all from, the conditioning of our caretakers as well as the people we grew up around in our lives. And there's a purpose behind it. It is a survival tactic. So when we think about the shadow, it's not something to be just push it away, don't worry about it. It gives us elements of ourselves that we've repressed. However, they're important keys to who we are. And we repress them out of survival. So I mentioned the child that finds out the ways that they receive love and the ways in which they don't receive love, and they start to refine their actions based on that. But even ancestrally, if we think about, if you were to be exiled from your tribe back in the day, it could mean death. So these are still, loops that are intertwined in our psyche, even though today's day and age, they don't make sense. We are not in a day and age where if we get exiled from a group of friends, that it means that we're going to starve to death. But we still, our lizard brain, or the oldest part of our brain, still thinks this way. And so it is a practice of starting to slowly peel back and be like, that's not true. Like showing to yourselves ways in which that's not true. Okay, this is safe to show this part of myself. So that, and it's also a basic human need. We all have a need to receive love. And so we will do what we think is needed in order to receive that basic need that we have within us to receive love. This brings me to another quote of Richard Rudd. I love him, so I quote him often. And he says, "Constriction exists where love is absent." So just invite you to close your eyes or take a soft gaze towards the ground and just receive those words again. Just taking a deep breath. Constriction exists where love is absent. And then keeping the eyes closed or the soft gaze and keeping tuned in with your breath, I'll invite in another quote by Carl Jung. And this quote states, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You can open the eyes. And this brings up a good element of the shadow. So there's a lot of beauty in doing shadow work. It creates more self-awareness and that sense of belonging and coming home to self. And with that quote from Carl Jung, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So the shadow, what happens over time is when we evolve, but our shadow keeps getting suppressed, it stays at the level of maturity that you first started repressing it down. It doesn't have the opportunity to grow alongside us, hand in hand with us. So whatever you might have repressed at like 7 years old or at 14 or even younger at 3, those parts of you never get the opportunity to emerge and mature. And so what happens is they stay stuck in the shadows. They don't go away. They're always going to be a part of you, but they stay stuck in the shadows. And they will start to pop out, twisted and sideways and in comments that maybe you don't mean. They will emerge in these twisted backwards ways. So it will be less under our control. So it's not like we're driving the ship. So yeah, touching into that maturity level, our shadow doesn't get the opportunity to evolve and learn how to socially interact with the people around it. So it can sometimes come out in like slips of the tongue where we say something we don't mean. And those are the ways that we can recognize like, I said that thing and I didn't mean it, but there's part of me that did. There's part of me that wanted to say that. And maybe it's just a younger part of you that you hadn't allowed. And it's like, hey, I want attention. Like, come on. Like, you've been pushing me down for so long, so I'm going to slip out when you least expect it and possibly embarrass you in the moment. And so that's one way we can start to recognize the shadow, is just noticing when we say things that feel out of character for us. And understanding that they are part of our character. It's just a maybe less mature part of our character. And it can also come up when we look at the triggers that we find in other people. Like thinking about like, what is it that triggers you the most about someone close in your circle? Or maybe just that one person that you run into, in town sometimes, where you're just like, man, I just can't stand this one aspect about this person. The beautiful thing about shadow work is that we have elements that person is expressing that we are not allowing. And that's why it's triggering for us. And the more we do this shadow work and we start to reintegrate parts of ourselves, we'll notice that those triggers start settling They don't exist as much anymore when we find them in the external world, because we're like, I see that. And I love that part of myself now. Like I'm seeing that part of you, and maybe it can still be triggering because these people might have an overexpressed shadow. But we are able to come into a deeper understanding of it because we've found that within ourselves. And the beautiful piece about shadow work too is what Carl Jung states, is that the shadow is 90% our inner gold. So we think of shadow work as like, oh, it's the dark, sticky, like I don't want to look at that stuff. But when we really start to go into the shadow work, it's not only the things that, may feel uncomfortable for us to express, that have been repressed or denied or rejected. It's also those creative parts of ourselves, the potential of our gifts that we showed when we were younger. Maybe we were singing too loud and someone told us to shut up. And then we stop singing, but we have a beautiful voice and we've repressed that part of ourselves and feel uncomfortable using our voice around other people. And so when we start to dive in, it's this understanding of, yes, there can be some discomfort in it, but there's also a lot of beauty to be gained. Sometimes on the flip side of the coin of the one part of the shadow that you have come into contact with is actually the greatest beauty that you will ever experience about yourself. And so that's where we start to come home to this true belonging to self, is understanding that when we pull all of those pieces back home to the heart of who we are and find that wholeness within, it allows us to express from a place of deeper authenticity. And through that belonging that we found within will begin to be met by the world around us. We'll start to just naturally find those people that gravitate into our lives and just love you for who you are. No matter what you say to them, or no matter what things you have on your mind or what expressions you make, they will always love you for who you are because you're authentic and they can trust that. And yeah. So let's just take a breath into that before we move into the journaling prompts. So I have 2 questions for us to journal about. And I'll give about, we'll say 2 minutes for each one. So the first journaling question is, what parts of yourself were not allowed when you were growing up? What parts of yourself were not allowed when you were growing up? The second question, what parts of you now still feel like too much or not enough? What parts of you now still feel like too much or not enough? And I'll just invite you to come back to your breath. Maybe close the eyes. If it feels good to put your hands upon your body, wherever you may be feeling sensation after exploring those questions, and just breathe with that part of you. Letting it know you are there with it. Through the breath and through touch. And you can slowly open the eyes. Now I would love for us to go into a little bit of an embodiment practice. And I'm going to ask us to stand up. So maybe just stand up and scoot the mats out a little bit so we can all be in a circle with each other. And we'll just start by shaking it out. So allow yourself to come into your body, bouncing up and down on the heels. Any sounds that you want to make, to fluttering the lips or sighs out. And then we'll just slowly come back to standing, finding ease and grounding in your feet. And just noticing in this moment if it feels best for you to be standing or if you want to sit for this portion of the practice, whatever feels good for you, honoring your body. And just allow yourself to breathe. Deepen the breath, the inhales and the exhales. And if it feels comfortable for you, you can either take a self-holding or maybe just placing one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, just to begin to draw your energy and focus within. And I invite you to begin to do another body scan, but this time around, I want you to see if you can tune into the parts inside of you that feel like home. I'm just taking a few breaths into that. And if that concept of home isn't immediately present in the body, or maybe there's some confusion around what home feels like, tune into a memory or a time or a feeling of when you felt the most welcomed, when you felt the most loved exactly as you are. And once you find that memory or sensation, I want you to track in your body where that shows up, where that sensation of home, of belonging, of being welcomed, where that arises. And then you can place one or both hands upon that area of your body. And just begin to notice the sensations around that space. And you think of what it means to feel fully welcomed, accepted, and loved. What are the nuances of that sensation as you find it within yourself? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it light? Is it heavy? Is it tingling? Is there movement? Does it feel expansive or tense? Just beginning to name the sensation. And allowing yourself to be present with the sensation of feeling home, feeling belonging in the body. I invite you to ask that sensation if it could make a sound, if it had a voice. What would it sound? Maybe it's a sigh on the exhale, maybe it's a And if it feels comfortable for you, you can allow that sound to emerge. Now that you've tuned into that inner sensation of home, remember where it's at. Remember what it feels like as we begin to dive into another inquiry. I invite you to tune into a time where you felt like something you said, a part of yourself, an expression, was not allowed. And you can use a memory from the journaling prompt. And just begin to track where in the body this now lands. As you think about a part of yourself, either present or past, that felt rejected or denied. Just notice where in the body it lands and what sensations emerge. And you can move one or both hands to that new area, or maybe it's the same space and just a different sensation. And just notice the nuances of the sensation. What does it feel like to be that part of you inside? And maybe you notice if there's a certain way that that part of you wants to posture itself. Maybe it makes you want to feel like you want to collapse inward or go small, and I invite you to maybe explore that just a little bit, just enough to still have capacity to be with the sensation. Maybe the shoulders round forward if you feel like a collapsing in on yourself. Maybe there's another shape that this part of you wants to take. If there's frustration or heat around it that wants to move, maybe it's a tensing of the muscles. Just continuing to breathe with what is, and be with that part of you. And now I invite you to ask this part, this sensation, if it had a voice, what sound would it make? Maybe it's a grumble, or maybe a more sad sound, or just whatever emerges. No thought needs to happen from it, but just allowing on your next exhale for whatever sound, if it feels comfortable, to emit as that sensation. And coming back to the breath, staying tuned in with that part of you. If that part of you could speak, what would it want to say right now? And if you feel comfortable saying that out loud, you can say it out loud. Just whatever arises, it doesn't have to make sense. It can be a word or a sentence or a phrase, but tuning in, if that part of you could speak, what would it want to say right now? And just notice as you say those words or word, what arises within you as you allow that part of you to speak. Staying tuned in with the breath. And now I invite you to allow the shaking to come back in again. If you want to stay seated, if you're seated, you can, but just allowing the body to move and shake. Maybe some sighs or sounds come out with the shaking. And then I invite you to slow the shaking and come back to a self-holding position. And I want you to return to that home that you found within. Just returning to the breath. Tuning back into that part of yourself that has felt held, that has felt loved, that has felt accepted and cared for and heard exactly as you are. And if you can't think of a time, maybe just imagine what that feels like and where it lands in the body. Allow that part of you to expand and grow with the breath and with self-holding. And maybe you notice your posture shift a little bit to come into how would your body posture in that feeling of being loved, held, accepted, that feeling of belonging that you cultivate within. And maybe just taking a few sighs or sounds on your next few exhales. Beautiful. Allowing yourself to open the eyes, come back into the space, maybe a little massage or self-touch, love, and you can come to a seat if you'd like as well. So, thank you all for joining me in that participatory experience and going into that part of yourself, those parts of yourself. And I'd love to open it up for just a brief share. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing, and beautiful to just witness your awarenesses and different pieces coming to light for you. And hopefully that will kind of propel this journey of like bringing those parts of yourself back home and cultivating this deeper sense of belonging within. So we'll just do a brief grounding and closing, and we'll just start by orienting back into the space. Slowly looking around the room, as if your eyes were a paintbrush that could actually receive everything that's around you. Slowly painting in all of the colors, patterns, images, objects. And as you do, deepening the breath. Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips. allowing yourself to re-arrive in the here and now. Making sure to look back behind you, above you, and below you. And then coming into a self-holding position once more. One hand under the armpit, other hand over top of the shoulder. Allow the shoulders to relax. Holding yourself as if you were your own loved one. Allowing yourself to breathe in this feeling of being held. Knowing that you can always return back to the home that you found within yourself. That's a feeling that you generate from within. Even if in moments it takes a memory to bring it back, you can always bring it back and then just be with that sensation of what it means to belong within. And then you can allow the eyes to open, maybe take a stretch or whatever else you need to. Just come back to your body and into the space. Thank you all so much for participating, being a part of this workshop today.
Hey y'all, this is Natalie with the Wild Nature Channel. If you liked the workshop, click that like button, comment about your experience, and share it with anyone who you think it will benefit. And last but not least, hit that subscribe button to support me and my work and my channel so that I can keep doing what I love and bringing you this good content.